I'm sure you can call it business of education or education business. It's a business in everything. After all, the prof there, they talk about the power and payment for it. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to 30 Minutes of Business on this side of Sunrise Daily. It's Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. I'm Mini John McQuarrie. We start today from the currency space, where we see that NAFEX appreciated, gaining, from the previous session. Appreciated, added 2.34 kobo. That's for NAFEX to close at 1,549 naira. That's 0.15%. And NFEM was on the flip side, lost about 4 naira right there to close at 1,546 naira. 85 kobo. In percentage, it's 0.31%. The CBN, on the CBN rate, we had depreciation also 0.36% to close at 1,550 naira. And it's odd, normally you would see the biggest value on the CBN rate, but today we see the opposite side. So we have 1,406, 1,549, but 1,550. For the CBN rate at the close of trade today, and still around the 1,500 or under 1,600. I guess that would be a better way to capture it. Now, the federal government has launched a technology export and digital trade desk, and it's supposed to attract more investment into Nigeria's tech sector and also increase startup funding to $5 billion annually. The initiative, announced by the Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Mr. Bosun Tijani, is a collaboration with the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. The trade desk aims to help local tech companies compete globally by promoting Nigerian technology export. And the goal is to raise the tech sector's contribution in Nigeria's GDP from currently 14% to 21% within 3 years. Mr. Tijani says that the initiative also aligns with the country's effort to improve its ranking in the Economic Complexity Index's ECI. And this is in the works, and we'll see how it's implemented. Now, our President Bola Tinubu, is scheduled to depart to Abuja. Is already, as we speak, in Abu Dhabi for the Sustainability Week. And yesterday we did see a series of meetings that the president has been having. According to a statement by Special Advisor on Information Strategy, Mr. Bayo Ononuga, the president is meeting with His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. He invited President Tinubu to attend the summit, which already is in place and is supposed to end January 18. The event, Nexus of the Next Supercharging Sustainability Progress, will enable policymakers, business and civil society leaders to explore pathways to fast-track the transformation of the economy into a sustainable form and evolve a new era of prosperity at the event, which the president has already started, is expected to stress his administration's reforms, including those related to energy sufficiency, transportation, public health, and economic development. Now go to the global space. Oil prices slipped. It was a very bullish market yesterday, but it slipped now to open Tuesday, even though it's still near a 4-month high, as Chinese and Indian buyers sought new suppliers in the wake of Biden administration's toughest sanctions yet on Russia. So we see a drop on Brent, 0.27% drop to now $80, $80.79. Remember, yesterday about this time it was above $81. WTI also went down 0.2%. $78.66 a barrel. And remember, all of this started when the United States introduced new sets of sanctions, on Russian oil, and most of their traders, which of course is China and India, have had to turn the other way for supplies. So it might seem far-fetched, but let's see how this affects us here in Nigeria. Do remember that, of course, our mainstay is still crude. In our budget for 2025, is set the benchmark for crude for Brent, which is our own sources, at $75. So is this good for us one way or the other? There's also the threat that this might increase the price of petrol at the pump, seeing that we're running a deregulated market at this time. Well, let's hear what Senior Associate with Financial Derivatives, Dumebi Oluwale, has to say. Hi, Dumebi. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Good to have you. Good to see you. So, we should be happy because $80, $81 above our benchmark of 75 should mean more revenue for us.
Yes.
But at the background, we're also hearing that if our producers, refiners, are buying crude, because it's a global price,
yes,
if they're buying crude at a higher cost, then we should expect higher refined products, higher cost of refined products.
I mean, you're not wrong there. So you're very right in that if crude oil prices remain at this high levels that we're seeing, it's a good news for the federal government in terms of what we've benchmarked our crude oil price, what we've benchmarked our budget at, which is $75 per barrel. So what that means is that if we're able to produce more crude oil and we export a lot more at higher prices, we will generate more revenue, especially when we look at it, when you convert the foreign currency earnings into naira. It means that going into the year we might see an increase in fact disbursements like we saw almost all through 2024. It means that the federal government has more revenue to actually meet some of these budget expenditure
unless for debt servicing.
Exactly.
That's also another.
Yeah, that's also another thing that we're looking at, and it also somewhat means that if we're able to generate more revenue, the budget deficit as a percentage of GDP, which is currently estimated at 4%, for the 2025 budget, is slightly higher than what we should be having, which is about 3%. It means that we might see that somewhat decline, and this is based off of the assumption that all things go well, all prices remain at this. You
economists say it's all other things being equal.
Yes, holding all things constant. You know that this is the scenario, but we do know that we still have a lot of struggles with ramping up our oil production. We've seen oil production increase. I think on average last year we did about 1.4 million barrels per day, and we saw that steady increase. So if we're able to actually significantly ramp up oil production to hit what the budget estimate is, it means that we're looking at a positive thing going on in terms of revenue for the federal government. But on the flip side, like you rightly said, if oil prices are higher, it means that we might see an increase in petrol prices. But the thing to consider here is actually the source of crude oil for the local refineries that are existing here in Nigeria. We know at the end of last year we did see that the some of the modular refineries are already ramping up production. The Dangote refinery as well is also ramping up production, and to an extent even exporting to neighboring African countries. However, the expectation is that if the NNPC and if Nigeria is able to make sure that these refineries access crude oil locally, what this means is that they're able to hedge some of these higher costs of operations, and then
but they still have to pay at the global price.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that if we look at it in terms of the supply mechanism, right, when you're purchasing crude oil from the person that is producing it and selling at the global market, to an extent it somewhat reduces your cost. So while you're going to
all those insurance, transportation, logistics,
because the price in itself, the spot price of crude oil in itself, is not the only determining factor for what eventually becomes the final price or retail price of petroleum in the market. So if refineries are able to reduce all the other costs, from shipping costs to logistics costs, insurance costs, they're able to somewhat reduce that by actually sourcing their crude oil locally. What this means is that to an extent their cost of producing refined petroleum products will decline marginally, and that should somewhat, at least to an extent, keep petrol prices stable. I'm not saying it's going to fall because oil prices are higher, but what we'll likely see is stable petrol prices.
Yeah, but maybe there's so many ifs in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the world that we're working with right now. Yeah.
So to start with, even though the price of crude is going up now, we don't know how long that's going to take.
Last,
because Biden's administration is the one bringing up this new set of sanctions on Russia. Trump is coming up in less than 2 weeks. Trump is friends with Putin.
I mean, so right now, right, I think the important thing to take, the major takeaway here is that the oil market is volatile. And there's no that doesn't change whether under Trump or under Biden or under Putin. It doesn't change. And what we expect as economists from any developing nation that is highly vulnerable, right, to external shocks like this, that you make sure you hedge. And how do you hedge? For instance, for Nigeria, we do know that Nigeria is more sensitive to changes in in oil production than prices. So where we need to do more of the work is to increase our production, so that if oil prices are higher, we're able to generate more revenue. And we saw this happen during the COVID year. We also saw this happen in 2022. COVID year is an example of when oil prices significantly declined. But what did we see eventually? We saw the cartel coming in. We saw Saudi Arabia coming in to try to make sure that oil prices are propped up and at a certain level where all oil-producing economies are able to at least still break even. They're not all going to break even at the exact same price. But the expectation is that oil prices are at a manageable level where all oil-producing economies, all oil exporting countries are able to generate some level of substantial revenue. The other aspect of it is that when you consider when oil prices significantly increase, right, when you're producing a lot more, you're going to generate a lot more revenue. It's almost like a win-win to an extent. I don't think that oil prices are going to crash because Trump is coming into power, but what we do expect that there will be some level of decline in prices, because with his administration, we do know that there's going to be an increase in the U.S. Crude oil production, and there's also expectations that if he comes into power, we might see a level of stability, or to an extent maybe even the Russia-Ukraine one.
He promised us he will sort that out
exactly,
even before
and if
getting
that
into
happens,
office.
exactly, and if that happens, right, what does that mean? It means
less
that tensions, less geopolitical tensions.
Steady
and
supply,
all going to,
and then
exactly.
Well, let's hope so. But FDC has projected that the next inflation number we expect in a couple of days would hit 35. I think that's expected. December, you always have a lot of. But I think the surprising thing is domestic commodities prices are falling now.
Yes.
Because
I really like the segue to that question, but primarily,
so there you have it. Domestic commodities prices are falling on low demand. People not eating anymore, right?
I mean, what we're seeing here basically, but let me start with the inflation figure. I think, like you rightly said, it's expected, and the reason why almost all research houses at this point forecast an increase in inflation is just because of the festive season effect. We saw what happened with debt in December, an increase in consumption, increase in income, and increase in spending, and we also saw prices remaining high, and that obviously had an impact on commodity prices. But right now we're seeing prices fall, and that's primarily because of low demand. So we do know that in January there's usually a lull in economic activities, and people are not demanding as much, and to an extent some people stocked up from the festive period into January. So what it means is that they're not going to the market as frequently, and so demand is also lower. Then the other thing to consider is this is also the period where businesses are stocking up as well. So to one extent, we're going to see more inventory, and that also will, somewhat keep prices at least high or even lower. Then the other thing to consider is an increase in the harvest season effect. So in Q3 entering into Q4, we do know that there's a lot of plant season and harvest season going on, and from now on, from at least in January, we would see an increase in supply of certain commodities just because we're still in that harvest season. But going into like end of February, going into March, we might see the planting season come up again, and then prices will start.
So this is the time to stock up. It's just
exactly.
Do you have the storage, preservation and all of
I mean,
that?
we're seeing very innovative, preservative measures now coming up on a subsistence level. People are now learning how to dry their tomatoes, roast their tomatoes, blend their tomatoes, even make homemade tomato paste, right? So we're seeing Nigerian consumers be more lucrative in how they are keeping their produce to ensure that at least it lasts them long. And I think another thing to mention here is the fact that we're seeing more units demand happen now. So people are not exactly buying like 5 bags of rice, 2 bags of rice. We're seeing more unit demand going on, and more frequent trips to like smaller markets or neighborhood markets now, because people are not able to buy.
The purchasing power is not there for bulk
demand.
Well, thank you so much, Dumi. Before that, I mean, I think at least we have a bit of good news of the reduction in prices.
Yes.
We should surely stock up at this time and see how long. But thank you so much. As soon as we should be financial services company, Dumi Oluwole. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm talking about homegrown initiatives, storage, and everything about our commodities. Let's delve more into that now with the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Seed Project Company Limited, Dr. Zainab Gwadabe, joins us from our Kano studio. Dr. Gwadabe, good morning, and thank you for your time.
Good morning.
So I do hope that you heard a bit of our conversation there. Maybe was talking about what Nigerians are doing now. So price of some food crops are reducing because supply is increasing. And so people are finding innovative ways, homegrown ways to preserve for off-season. I wonder if it's something you've seen around you over there in Kano.
Can you hear me? Can you please come again with the question?
Dr. Gwadabe, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Please come again with the question. I lost
you. Okay, all right. So I was asking, oh God, I do hope that you heard previous conversation, because I wanted to follow up on that to say, maybe saying that because the price of some food crops are reducing at this time, it does seem like some Nigerians are finding ways of preservation, making homegrown or homemade tomato paste just to keep it for the off season. I wonder if you have noticed anything like that around you.
Okay. Oh, all right. Thank you for having me, Ini. So, yes, there's a lot of things happening around me, especially in the rural community that I work in. You see a lot of families, women, youth, going back into farming, especially the backyard farming, just to produce food that they can consume, not necessarily to make money out of it, but just to be able to eat for themselves, because everything now has, the price of food has gone up, and most of our staples that used to be affordable to these rural farmers, even though they are the ones that produce it, it is no longer affordable to them. So a lot of women are going into backyard farming, especially with crops like roselle, tomatoes, and their likes. Yes.
So a couple of times I've been to some northern states, and I notice because most of the food we eat come from the northern part, so it seems a lot of times there's excess supply and there's waste, post-harvest losses. So you see them drying tomatoes, pepper on the roads you're driving through and all of that. I wonder, is that still a constant there? And how do you think we can handle such waste?
Yes, post-harvest loss is very common, has always been there, but recently it's becoming even worse. There are a lot of factors around it. One, there is issue of storage. That is one. Two, there is issue of transportation, power supply. Even if you have the storage facility, sometimes power supply becomes an issue. And yes, there is transportation, and there is even the crop itself, especially the perishable ones like tomato, pepper, atarudu, those ones that don't last after harvest. There is a lot of things happening around them. Women are, even the men now after harvest, try to just cut them and dry them on the side of the roads. Especially in my area, you'll see a lot of that happening.
Aren't there better ways that this can be done from your finding?
Yes, there are a lot of things that can be done with post-harvest loss, especially when it comes to mechanization. Mechanization has a lot of impact, will have a lot of, if farmers are able to go into mechanization fully like everywhere else, like most developed countries, it will reduce post-harvest loss. I just want to give you an example. If you look at, if you're planting rice and you are using the traditional method, using hoes and everything to cultivate, and you decided to bring in, to go into mechanization, maybe to bring someone to come with a tractor and do the labor for you, it will cost you averagely about 130,000 for harrowing of 1 hectare of land, which sounds like a lot of money, but compared to when you do it manually, and at the money you spend doing it manually is more expensive compared to doing it with the machine. If you're doing it manually, I think you pay each person around 3,500 per day. Minimum is 3,000 and 3,500 naira per day, and that person you pay, maybe you have to employ 10 people to do that 1 hectare for you, because they won't like go all in, and like they will not dedicate the whole time to do the work. So you might have to pay today and tomorrow. Meanwhile, if you're using a tractor, you just do it in an hour or less.
So are we saying the lacking, what we're lacking there is the funds?
Lacking, sorry, can you please come again?
Are you in this case saying that the challenge there, the missing link is the money, or is it the machine?
Yes, the issue is the machine, because I've been in this industry for a long time, but currently I cannot say I know one person who owns a maize combine harvester. It costs about 250,000 to harvest a hectare of land, from like the harvest, the removing of the cob, the packing of the straw and everything. It will cost you around 200 and something, and it's even not available even if you're willing to do it. So the longer your corn stays on the farm, the more loss you incur. So mechanization can reduce post-harvest loss with about 400% if done properly.
And yes, we have a lot of youths, especially, who are innovative. I know there's a young man in Plateau State who does some of these machines for agriculture. There are some in University of Lagos. So where are we missing the link, bringing these young brains to where the needs are?
So in the north here, we don't have much of that option, because of the issue of even sensitizing these farmers of the importance of mechanization. They're still very reserved and conservative in terms of adopting technology and mechanization into their daily farming activities. When a farmer is comfortable, it takes a lot of time and effort to convince that farmer that this is the way forward. Like this, with this approach, you will make more money and you'll be more productive. So we're still in the process of that sensitization and creating awareness.
So we have to sensitize them first before we can even get the youth, because there are some youths who are already building these machines. So is it acceptability that is discouraging the youth from broadening their horizon to where the farmers are?
Really, no, I cannot say. It's not. There is issue of accessibility, yes, because we have a lot of issue around extension. There is no farming there is no agriculture without extension, because whatever is done in terms of research, in terms of new technology, in terms of new equipment, if there is no extension, the technology, the machines, the equipment will be there, but it won't reach to where it's supposed to go. Yes, a lot of youths are interested in agri-tech, but the rural farmers, being 80% of the people that produces the food that we consume, are not aware of those technologies or cannot access those technologies yet.
So how do we accelerate this? Do we task the government, for instance, to maybe put it in local dialects and take it there? Or is it individuals like yourself who are inside this, from the private sector, but inside the agricultural sector?
I mean, sensitizing these farmers is everyone's responsibility. With the private sector, the government, the extension, private and government extension service units are all responsible for sensitizing these farmers. But I mean, we have to bring these new technologies close to the farmers who are the people that are very close to these farmers. I would say we, the seed companies, the extension agents, and the local community heads, if we can come together, and maybe farmers believe in what they see. So if you can do demo for them to see for a season, if you use this, it will cost you so amount of money to cultivate a hectare of land, and at the end of the day, this is what you will get. And if you use your traditional method, this is how much you spend, and this is how much you make at the end of the day. So when they see that, then you don't even have to tell them which one to pick. They will make informed decisions on their own.
All right, so some moments ago you did say that you have a lot of youths interested in farming, but that's not the general perception. Has it changed? Do you have a lot of youths in farming now?
Yes, we do have youths interested in agriculture, but we're not where we want to be. We want the youth, considering the population of youth in the country, we want the youth to dominate the sector. So we're still not there, but we're getting there. The youths want to go into the sector, but there are a lot of factors that when you talk to them one-on-one, they will tell you, this is what is stopping me, and this is why I am not where I want to be. These factors like access to finance. When you want to go into farming is not for everyone now, to be honest. They used to think farming is for the poor, but now the cost of a bag of fertilizer is 45,000 naira, so it's not for everyone. And if the youths want to go into production and they go to the commercial banks or any other bank to get loan, they will ask them for collateral. These youths are probably graduates. They're just getting out of school, so they don't even have anything to give, and they are very tech inclined, so they want to look all good, all fancy, and be on the field. So if you can bring in technology and mechanization for them, like you'll be on your bed or in your room and you just be controlling the drones and all those tech things, I mean, they are very much interested in things like that. So it will catch their attention. And
what's your take on genetically modified food? There's been a lot of pros and cons conversation. I just want to get your perception on that.
Oh, well, I don't really like making comments on genetically modified seed, but let me just say a few things. So genetically modified seeds are just like every other seeds. Take, for example, a maize. What differentiates our normal maize from the genetically modified maize is they call this genetically modified maize improved variety. Why is it improved? Because they modified the genes in that variety. They want to make it probably drought tolerant or pest resistant, or they just want to make it adaptable to the climate change. So they just, what they do is they go and find a gene that is resistant to that particular thing they want to do to that maize. Is it pest resistance? So they'll go maybe in animals, it could be anywhere, animals, other plants, and get that gene that can, if put into that maize, can make that maize resistant to pest. But before you put that gene, you have to use something they call a bad gene. A bad gene is the one thing that will make that gene you bring from another plant or animal to put inside the corn to stay and give it that characteristic that they want it to have. It is called a bad gene from the name. Another thing is there is something they call terminator gene. So terminator gene is when something they also put in that maize that after a certain period of time that crop will not germinate again. So you have to go back to the source and get that seed to come and plant, which to me I don't think is wise and sustainable, because when you depend on someone to give you something to feed your country, it's just a matter any day that that person decided to say, I'm not giving you this material, it means Nigeria is going to be hungry. And we have other crops. What are we talking? Why are we even talking about this genetics? It's all about everything is around climate resilience, being a drought tolerant, flood tolerant, heat tolerant, pest resistant. We have local crops that we are comfortable with that can give us that 10 metric tons that the GMO will give you if, like everything is, with all things being equal, if you follow the good agronomic practice, we have hybrids that can give you the same 10 metric tons.
All right,
so
Dr. Zainab.
If you're not comfortable with that, if you're not comfortable going with that GMO, why just stick to what we
know, what we're used to?
There are countries that I read about, countries like Russia. If you take GMO to Russia, it's a death penalty. So these things are...
All right, Dr. Gwadabe. All right, Dr. Zainab Gwadabe, thank you so much for sharing your findings and your perception on genetically modified food right there. Dr. Gwadabe is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Seed Projects Company Limited. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we have to find a way to get this food security. We have to head back now to the Sunrise Daily Studio, but not before I tell you that yesterday the stock market was in the red, 0.08%, even though we're still hovering around 105,000 level, talking about the all share index. But at 1 p.m., Laddie Williams will be here with Aniti Ede to give you intraday numbers. And 55 minutes of business is what awaits you then. John Mekwa, hand you back to the Sunrise Daily team.